Hi everybody, this is What I Believe. Today I want to talk about the problem of evil in continuation from last time, in that I want to argue for the fact that given that we know the problem of evil can exist with God, I want to argue that given the Christian theism, the probability that there ought to be evil actually increases with the Christian theism. In other words, if God of the Bible exists, one ought to expect evil. First, there are basically 4 Christian doctrines that increases the probability of the existence of evil, given that the Christian God exists. Number 1, the chief purpose of life is not happiness, but rather the knowledge of God. In other words, the happiness of life that many of us are trying to pursue is in nowhere near as important as knowing God. God's role is not to achieve human happiness in life, but rather the knowledge of God Himself, which in the end will produce the everlasting and true human fulfillment and happiness. The second reason what I think the happiness of life is way less important than the knowledge of God is because innocent human suffering represents an occasion for deeper dependency and trust in God. The third reason that throughout history there's always a correlation between the suffering in the world and the growth of the gospel. The second main Christian doctrine that gives us confidence that the probability of evil should exist given that the Christian God exists is mankind is in a state of rebellion against God and His purpose. Given the terrible human evils that we hear in the news, even right now, using the coronavirus as a leverage to gain political means, are simply testimonies to humans' depravity in the state of moral and spiritual alienation from God. The second reason being that there is a realm of higher spiritual beings that are incredibly evil, and their purpose is to destroy God's word for the purpose of His kingdom. The third reason is God lets human depravity run its course. This is evident in Romans 1 of the Bible. The third doctrine of why the probability of the existence of evil increases given the Christian God theism is that God's purpose is not restricted to this life alone, but rather into the eternal life beyond the grave. When God asks His children to bear horrible sufferings in this life, it is only with the prospect of a heavenly recompense and joy that is simply beyond all comprehensions. The fourth doctrine that increases the probability of existence of evil given the Christian God is the knowledge of God is an incommensurable good. The suffering of this life are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us who believes. We very often will not see God's reasons for permitting this horrible suffering in our lives, so we are called upon to have faith and to trust Him in the midst of these dark valleys. If a Christian God exists, then the suffering and the problems in the world will not go to waste. However, if God doesn't exist, then we are locked in a world filled with unredeemed suffering, and evil does exist, and suffering do exist. So it is better to believe in a good and gracious Christian God. This is why I believe that given the Christian doctrine, the probability of the existence of evil exists.